Hello, everybody. Welcome to Juju Show. We're up to number, let me check the sheet, 43. So let's go around. We got some guests today. Heather, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Good. I'm Heather, and I work on Juju. So
I feel you're back for your second one. You're going to start becoming a regular attendee soon. Watch out. How's the weather out in Canada, Phil?
Today it is rainy and a little cold, but it's not so bad. It's fairly pleasant for the time of year. It could be much colder. So
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll trade you some ice and snow if you want. I've got some ice and snow in my yard out here. So
I'm trying to cut down on that.
You're trying to cut down? Yeah. Do it that. So let's get this party started. We've got some stuff to talk about from the community news, and then I have a demo prepared. So first of all, let's talk releases. And I hate doing this. I keep doing this. They're almost releases. So just a heads up to keep an eye out. We're going to have the 2.5, which is the next big release of Juju, the beta 2 getting cut this week. So look for that. And the reason I want to make sure to plug that is because we want people to test it, beat on it, file bugs, try to break it, challenge accepted. Go out there and try this out. Now that we're into the beta stage, we promise that you'll be able to upgrade your beta controllers to the RC controllers to final GA controllers. So we encourage you to put it through some real testing, run it in staging and QA and stuff first before it goes to production. But definitely give it a try and give it a good solid shakedown. Let us know what we can find to make sure we correct, because everyone hates brown paper bag releases. We'd hate to do that. We'd rather do that on a beta than a GA, right? So. And for those following on the steady path, the stable path, there'll be a 2.4.7 release coming this week as well. It's in testing right now, like final QA before we hit the big button. So that button will probably get hit somewhere in the next, 24 hours. So keep an eye out for that. And when we come back in 2 weeks, hopefully we'll talk about getting ready for the 2.5 GA. So countdowns, get your clocks going, tick, 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 and be exciting times. So with that, I wanted to highlight, because we're getting ready of a kind of major version shift, the Snap channels are shifting around a little bit. So we've updated, Heather here did some good stuff to make sure that now whenever we land anything in the 2.4 branches, we build an edge snap, which lets you test things. So if you ever see your bug in 2.4, a fix is committed, you can actually test that within hours by switching to the 2.4 track edge snap. And that just looks like, snap, refresh, Juju, and then I think you do 2.4/edge. And that'll go and get you the latest little snap builds. You can test out, does the bug fix work for you and stuff. And that means that none of the stuff in the latest track is 2.4 related anymore. It's all 2.5, right? So we're going to have 2.5s in edge, 2.5s going to be in candidate, and then going towards final. So just keep track of your snaps and what you're tracking. Snap info Juju to see what's in the various tracks of things as we kind of shift away from 2.4 being the main focus to the 2.5 being the default focus as we get that going. So I don't know, everyone having fun? You've been playing with the 2.5 for a bit there, right, Phil? Because you're using some of the new fancy features.
I am, yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, so where I'm coming from is I tend to just be doing something new and different every day. So it's always an interesting challenge to figure out whether what I'm doing is just me making mistakes or whether some of the other related code I'm using hasn't been tested very well, or it's an actual bug in Juju. So I do try to go through all the other hoops that I need to jump through before I bubble something up to you guys. There's usually about 6 or 7 of those hoops before you end up seeing me pop up on IRC saying, hey folks, what's this all about then?
Are you saying that software stacks are getting a little crazy? A little
Yeah. I'm just glad I'm not a front-end developer right now.
There you go. Yeah. Aren't we all? We don't, JavaScript. We can make all the JavaScript jokes now. At least now that I don't write it day to day, I can make fun of it again. So team news. I wanted to share this because I think this is awesome. I don't know if you all have noticed in discourse or whatnot, but we have a new member that joined the Juju core team, and I want to highlight and say, hi, Tim. Hope you're watching this later on because you're in Australia on the other side of the world, or New Zealand. Australia.
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Darn it, New Zealand. That we're on. Anyway, so he's joined the team and has a little discourse post introducing himself. And one of the things he did that I really liked is he started like a newcomer paper cuts thread at discourse. And I always love whenever a new person starts because they come in without all the polluted eyesight of, banging your head on walls for years and stuff. And they find really kind of interesting new person things and like coming at this without any background. Here's some stuff I see. So I thought that was really cool. And I also want to kind of encourage, if there are any new folks to Juju, I don't know, like this Phil guy here, you're newish, right?
Yeah.
Encourage you to kind of do that stuff. I know sometimes people feel like, oh, it was just, I didn't understand it. And now that I've, gone through it all, I now understand and whatever. But sometimes those are the best things to highlight because if you didn't understand it, odds are someone else doesn't. And in the good old fashioned umbrella of you are not alone, it's good to sometimes raise those things because that when you've been in the trenches for so long, you stop seeing some of that stuff, or you just kind of, you train your fingers to work right around them. Right. So newcomers, I encourage you, jump in discourse, say hi, like Tim did, and feel free to go, hey, what's this about? And ask, what may seem like, dumb. They're not dumb questions. They're just new person questions. And those are good things for us to be able to kind of go, oh yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah. I'm not too shy to, ask the foolish questions, as you've probably seen from some of my posts. But and as I mentioned earlier, I do try and do a bit of groundwork first before I open myself up to the potential abuse of, what do you mean you had caps lock on the whole time?
Oh, we don't abuse, we just reply kindly. Man, ouch. All right. Let's see. Next, I wanted to highlight a couple other things going on in Discourse where there's a conversation around getting the latest Spark going in the charms. And part of playing with that, folks were trying out Spark on top of the Kubernetes work that's going into Juju 2.5. And there's been some good conversation and playing around with that. And it's exciting for us, obviously, to put together a feature and have folks start to tinker with it and go, ooh, this is really cool. I think that there's some good space in, Kubernetes is great for the like I call it the CPU kind of workloads, like and Juju's great because it can model infrastructure on both ends, like on your IaaS or infrastructure where you might have things like storage systems or data stores and things like that, and then being able to relate them into the workloads that may beat up on those storage systems, underlying systems and whatnot. And so I think big data space is interesting and it fits this, right? And you may have large swaths of data over here, but you might have very temporal, flexible, how many you get up and down, auto recovering and all that processing engines over in the Kubernetes space. And I think this is kind of an exciting way to play with and leverage Juju. And so I want to kind of highlight that there's some interesting work going on. And if you are also playing with this, there's some good conversations to join. And we'd love to hear other folks how they're trying to play with this and solving some of these problems. So it's always great when someone's like, this is interesting. And then you get through other people going, I agree. So let's get more people saying it. And that leads me to other collaboration things. Phil, do you want to talk about this one in particular, since this one, you might recognize it, about debugging in an IDE?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so like I have 20 years of debugging client server applications under my belt. And I always find, especially if you're debugging somebody else's or another company's code, if you're only able to like get a solid feed from the client side, you've only got half the picture. So, my next step is to pull the source and run the actual the Golang source for Juju through a debugger and do it that way. But I'm not quite ready to do that because that seems like a quite a large leap of faith into unknown waters. So really what I'd like to be able to do is what I'm able to do with some of the other Python stacks that I work with is just include some libraries into VS Code, which is what I use right now, and just be able to actually get the server side in the debugger so that I can breakpoint and watch variables and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea in that I think particularly on the charming side, I think that this would be really kind of cool. We have the idea of like the debug hooks where you can debug on, not on the code lines per se, but on events where you can say debug whenever this is triggered or whatnot, and you can kind of get a terminal and stuff in there. And wiring that into an IDE would be interesting, particularly with like the whole, like anything else, you've got kind of the build, update the remote code, and reach out to it and stuff. So there's some interesting ideas. What I wanted to highlight this for is that I know James jumped in and was kind of like, here's how I do my debugging setup. And like anything else, right? A bunch of Linux developers or, programmers get together, they're going to share. There's going to be some nugget of a cool tool that either you hadn't wired in that way or hadn't heard of that tool or whatnot. Shoot, how many hours have been wasted by developers sharing different Vim configs over the years, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to highlight and go, hey, Charmers, yeah, there you go. Phil's got his multi-window setup going. I wanted to kind of highlight this because I would be really interested to see that kind of knowledge share across folks that are doing the charming or whatnot. Like, what tips and tricks do you have, for getting in and debugging things faster and more efficiently? How are you arranging? What tools are you using and stuff? And I think there's a lot of, I'm sure there's got to be at least a few things that folks take for granted that they're like, oh, this is the way I do it. That at least some others will go, oh, I'd not tried that or hadn't thought about that way. Right. So, get in there, be proud of your setup and share it out and hopefully learn a trick or two from everybody else in the discourse post there.
You bet.
Cool. And let's see. The other post I wanted to talk about was options for production controllers. This has come up around a few different ideas. And I wanted, again, the reason I wanted to talk about it here was also a similar vein of a call for experience from folks. There's some stuff that I've worked on. I've done a couple blog posts before, and I will this week. I promise. I've been trying so far all week to get an old one about monitoring controllers and setting up your Prometheus for monitoring controller load and stuff. Ported over from my blog and updated and put in the discourse so it can be kind of on the official record, more easily discoverable and stuff. So there's that one. I had done one a while ago about using Let's Encrypt with your controller so that you can have a proper DNS name with a valid cert, and it makes it nicer for things like GUI and sharing with others and such. But then there's also some basic stuff around, how big should my controllers be for whatever load I expect and whatnot. And so we have a lot of folks with a lot of various experience. As a development team, all of our controllers tend to be very small, right? Spin up, test, does it work? How many do I need to test my feature? Tear it down, good. But we do interact with a lot of folks that run production controllers over time. And I want to try to knowledge gather the various experience and stuff there and see what we can encapsulate for new folks to come along and have somewhere to start from. Because people always ask, like, what size instance should my controller be? And my answer is always, I don't know. What are you going to do with it? Are you planning on running, 5 clouds out of it, 1 cloud out of it, no clouds, just running, this is how I'm going to get my Ceph cluster going or whatnot. It all depends. So, I need to find some ways in order to kind of put some knowledge around that. So if you're running Juju in production, I would love to hear about your setup. What cloud is it on? What size instances are you doing? And what kind of pain points do you find? And one of the reasons I want to get the monitoring stuff in play is because I'd love to see folks monitoring dashboards, their kind of number of models, units, the CPU load, memory load. And if we all had like a good common dashboard where we can kind of screenshot, this is what I'm running and how it's behaving and whatnot, I think it would give us some common language to speak about around it. So I'm going to get that post ported and I'll highlight that, I'm sure, the next Juju show or whatnot. But until then, start to think about it, pool our knowledge and resources together and see what we can come up with. There's definitely room to do some fun stuff there.
Cool. I've been profiling as I go. Part of the work I'm doing right now is the people that I'm working with are very interested in minimizing the non-profit generating footprint. So anything that's infrastructure that isn't actually making money, they want as small as possible. So I've been, and they're working with metal as well. So I've been given a whole bunch of different boxes to see what I can squeeze onto it. And I've got some profiles about what I can do with very, very modest machines. So I can chime in with some of those figures probably. I'll check with the guys, but I'm sure they'll be fine with that.
No, it'd be great. I know we're most aware of. We have a very large Juju environment that we have running in here inside Canonical, and so I know what the biggest end. I'll bet you no one's bigger than that one. And so I can give you that one, but it's also going to skew the results. So I don't think everyone needs to have full HA, 64 gig RAM or whatever 8-core beastly things to run a controller on. But if you've got tens of thousands of units all trying to communicate at the same time, turns out maybe you do. Anyway, but I think most folks, they start much, much smaller than that and kind of grow over time. So we'll see how that goes. Cool. Anyone else any other newsy item anyone wants to cover before we get into the featured topic?
Nope.
I brought my experts here so they can make fun of my demo when it goes horribly awry here. Because both of you guys are using, Heather, you developed the feature for the profiles in Charms.
Oh.
And Phil, you're one of the biggest users of it while it's been in development and beta.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Yeah. Very cool. So what I wanted to show is this. So when you have applications that go out and they deploy on a VM somewhere, they, are great. They get to do stuff. They may install packages or things. But when you take that and put it into a LXD container, oftentimes you find that there's limitations, right? Containers are a somewhat locked down environment in order to provide security and stability and to prevent things like escaping to the host and all that. And so there's a lot of conditions around that. And so some software needs special treatment basically in order to work. And to date, you've not been able to really do this well because you have to tweak rules in LXD, and Juju hasn't had a way of really doing that easily. Had really hacky stuff like change the default profile that Juju uses across all of your machines, which means all the machines end up looking like, an amalgamation of everything you might ever need on anywhere, which is really a mess, right? And especially with the LXD clustering support in 2.5, where you could actually run a small team development cloud on a few machines with the LXD cluster going. You can have like a multi-region looking, or, where you've got multi-node spread across HA. You want to be able to do a lot of testing, QA, and whatnot against these nice, cheap, and expensive clouds, be it a local LXD install or a remote cluster, before you go pay money at a public cloud or take up resources on your company's OpenStack or bare metal MAS, whatnot. So what we've done is said, Charm authors, and this is really a call to Charm authors, update your charms. Be aware of how your applications need to run. You can now provide, and let me get my little screen share button here. Where did it go? There it is. I've gotten so used to using Meet instead of Hangouts that I've lost my button recognition. So Charm authors, let's say, for instance, if you were an OpenStack charmer working on this Neutron Open vSwitch charm, which helps provide networking services for OpenStack Nova, the VMs, you can now, in your charm, see all these will be files that make up a charm, include this one, LXD-profile.yaml. So let's go click and let's go take a look at what's in this file. And this is it. Very light. Basically, it's a YAML file of what you would normally tweak your LXD profile YAML, and you provide a YAML of what you want to override in the profile. In this case, this being a networking application that needs to run, it needs 3 kernel modules, which are not available by default in a new LXD container. So all this is going to do is say, hey, if you deploy this thing and you deploy it into a LXD container, just make sure these things get loaded. And so it's a real simple set of instructions for Juju to follow. And let's show it doing it. So everyone see my terminal?
Yeah.
All right. So ignore all the red, scary block stuff. It's because I didn't want to install all of OpenStack. My demo is limited in scope. But you will see this note that the Neutron Open vSwitch charm is here. And it's a subordinate charm, which means that it sits on top of the Nova Compute charm where my VMs are going to provide that networking services. And so what's great is that charms deploy, which means I know that the LXD profile should be tweaked on it. This is all, notice that this is in a local host controller. So this is LXD running on my actual machine here. And so I can always check and kind of audit what's supposed to be on the machine by using the show machine command. So we'll notice that OpenViewSwitch is on machine 2 here. So if I show machine 2, there's this new section of YAML in the show machine description that talks about the profile. So it tells you what profile is in play, and it shows you what's been tweaked. And I can see my kernel modules that have been overloaded there, right? And just to, to show, no, really. Oh, don't look at my password. Just to show that, yeah. No, this is really cool. I can ls mod and see the IPv6 tables and the IP tables module loaded, and the OpenViewSwitch module loaded. So my container will now run properly without the operator having to worry about any kind of tweaks or custom stuff they've got to do. The charm author, the person that knows his application and running it best, has provided all the knowledge anyone needs to make sure this thing will work, whether it's in a LXD container or out on bare metal. You'll be good to go. Finally, just to complete the trio, I can actually look at use the LXD command, LXC, to actually see the profiles at play on my container. And here you can see that custom profile. Each application has its own individual profile. Notice that it's tracking the charm revision number. So as you upgrade the charm, the profile will get tweaked and updated over time, so that let's say kernels start doing something different out of the box, or there's a new requirement that the new version of the software needs in order to operate. The charm author can update and include that new requirement in the LXD profile, and we'll continue to update it. And if I were to remove the application, it would go away, right? So if I were to go, all right, let's remove OpenViewSwitch. Bye. Come on, go away.
That's
Anyway,
right there.
it'll take a second. But so Phil, you're saying that you're a heavy user of this. So what are you using it for?
So I'm using it a lot for deploying services that aren't quite ready to work in an isolated environment, so that I can start kind of masking away the parts that I know are safe to mask away. So I'll start with a privileged container and with a lot of C group rules and a lot of other things like that. And then I'll start to just pull them out as I go, just to see at what point it falls over. So I've spent a great deal of time learning all of those various raw LXC commands that you want to pass to de-isolate it and then re-isolate it again. And one day when in an alternate universe, I would write a tool with a beautiful GUI that would model that for you. It'd probably be called Juju.
Wait a minute. Wait. Don't create more work for us. All right. My application's gone here. I just real quick want to go back and now run my LXC config show. Oh, it's still there. It hasn't been cleaned up yet.
Do you have to remove the relationship first? The relation?
Oh, I figured if the thing's gone.
Is it gone?
Oh, what's the?
Did you find a bug?
That would be the way this would work.
Never.
Oh, what's that? Okay, so let's see. Juju says it shouldn't show up in relations because it's gone.
Gone.
The relation's gone. The thing's gone.
Gremlins.
LXC config.
I'm blaming gremlins.
Still there. Well, let's. All right. Now I really have to know. Let's go to the machine. See, did the actual? Oh, it didn't. Yeah, because it hasn't removed the profile, so it hasn't updated
Changed
the profile.
those.
It hasn't changed the machine. Ruh-roh.
And this is a subordinate, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good
Right.
case.
Darn it. I know. Gremlins. I'm blaming gremlins.
That's right. All right. So let's switch over real quick. So you mentioned all the different things. It's in the documentation, and I wanted to highlight. You're like, oh, that's great, Rick. Now, what kinds of things can or should I do with this? And I will say that there are limitations, at least kind of out of the box. And so there's a link in the show notes, but there's a section of the docs around charms and LXD profiles, and it gives some examples of things that you can touch and do. Obviously, Juju is supposed to be a tool for best practices of operations. So we don't let you do anything at all you want anytime. Like, I know, let's just, make everything unsecure by default, out of the box, mount all the things. Juju will yell at you. You can force it, as you're probably aware then, Phil, if you're doing a lot of testing of what things starting out as open as possible.
That's usually my last resort. I know if I'm doing the force option that I'm doing it wrong, basically.
Well, not you're doing it wrong. It just means that you're testing what you need to get cleaned up in the application there. So you can tweak lots of different things from various config settings. You can do things like enable nesting so that you can deploy things that create new VMs underneath of it. You can do grab some devices, so you might be able to grab a USB device or something into your container that you may need to work. All that kind of stuff. And so what I really just, again, encourage charm authors out there, make sure your stuff works inside LXD, be it a cluster or just your local, whatever you need to tweak to make the charms work. I encourage you to update your charms, add your little bit of YAML. This is all in the 2.5. It's available for testing in the current beta. It's pretty good stuff. I think Heather and the team have done some awesome work. So take advantage of it and make software easier to operate.
I had a question for Phil.
Sure.
Is the list of things we allow you to do and not allow you to do sufficient for what you need to do?
It's the right list. I reading through it and then looking at my kind of library of profiles. I saw a few where they were on your not included list, and they were also on my to-do get rid of this horrible hack list.
Okay. Good to know.
Like in my experience, there's always an alternative and usually better way to get whatever it is that you're trying to get into the container that is not done in the bad way.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. I know we definitely debate about that a lot, and we're eager for folks to try this because we want that feedback. Like you say, if you find that, this thing that I normally do is not allowed, that will probably be our responses. But is there a more clean, kind of correct way that it should be done? And if so, we're going to go, well, then, we've helped identify that. If there's not, and it doesn't work, then we want to know so we can help figure out what we're missing or what we were thinking, why we didn't allow it or whatnot, and update that going forward.
Yeah. I remember looking at the list of what's allowed in an LXD profile, and there's some sections that are kind of open-ended. So it's hard to find a list of what's allowed.
There isn't one.
There isn't one, right? So people could be doing things that we don't know are possible.
You get to a certain point, and then they start linking you to like kernel documentation, and that's where I start. Just going to make coffee.
Yeah. So that's all I have to demo. And in doing so, I've created work for Heather. Sorry. Hi. I'm going to check it one more time to see, because I know there was a cleanup process and it may take a minute, but no, it's still there.
You're using the Edge Snap?
Let me double check. I might have moved to the beta on this.
I noticed it said beta 2 at the top of your screen.
Yeah, but
so you're using Edge?
Oh, yeah. I'm on the Edge.
Okay.
This was bootstrapped yesterday, but I don't think anything landed in the last day.
Nothing's landed.
So all right, we'll go back and play this some more. And that profile should go away because the application's not needed. The machine should be updated. One other gotcha I want to warn folks about is to be careful what settings you play with, because LXD, most settings can be tweaked. And when LXD gets the notification that the profile's changed, it'll just apply it on the container. There are a handful of things, though, that if you change it while the container is up, it'll cause the container to restart itself. So if you're looking for a no downtime tweak, you might have to be careful about those things. They're kind of few and far between, and they're kind of drastic. The kinds of things that do need a reboot in order to do that. Linux is pretty good about not requiring that for the most part. So it's one of those, if it's the tool you need, then you need it. There's nothing we can do around it, So, but just to be aware of, it might be worth putting a note in your README or whatnot if you do find that you need something that requires LXD reboots when applied. So
another staging first.
Yeah, I was going to suggest to developers also, when you're adding a profile to a charm, try in a lot of different container places. We've noticed different results on whether or not you're using localhost, whether or not you're using a container in localhost, you're using a container on a different cloud. So try a variety of containers if at all possible. Definitely getting different results in different places.
And I think a lot of that turns into different version of LXD as it advances and the APIs advance over time, right? And you know, nested is always its own beast. Whenever you get into nesting container platforms, that's its own little thing there. And as you find, if you go to LXD's kernel base, so if you go to like a VM in AWS, you may find that out of the box you're getting a different kernel than you do on your own LXD on your laptop, which is probably running a much newer kernel or desktop based install versus more stable kernel from a cloud platform, which you're getting for operation stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's pretty good reasons for some of the differences, but just it's stuff to be aware of for sure. All right, anything else anyone wants to highlight? Going once, going twice? Then I hereby declare the Juju Show to an end. Thank you all for coming and attending, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks for the next show.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.